He was a ruthless millionaire, cold, untouchable, feared in every boardroom. She was a struggling single mom, exhausted, overlooked, fighting just to keep her children safe. Two worlds that were never meant to collide, until fate forced them together. What started as confrontation would soon unravel into the most shocking story of sacrifice, betrayal, and a love stronger than money itself. Stay tuned, because what happened when the millionaire met the single mom will leave you speechless. The morning sun crept slowly over the Chicago skyline, painting the glass towers gold. From the corner office of Cole Enterprises, the world seemed orderly, sharp, and under control, just the way Nathan Cole liked it. Every meeting scheduled, every dollar accounted for, every person in his empire expected to deliver on time. Yet this morning, that order had cracked. On his desk lay a contract worth millions, but the final report, the report he had been waiting on since last night, wasn't there. His client's patience had thinned. The call he had endured earlier had left his jaw tight and his knuckles white against the mahogany desk. The name printed at the bottom of the file burned in his mind. Emily Harper. He knew little about her, except that she was 32, a junior manager and, according to HR files, a single mother of 4 children. That was already a red flag in Nathan's world. Distractions, weaknesses, excuses. In his book, there was no room for failure. Frustration surged until he could no longer sit still. Slamming the file shut, Nathan grabbed his car keys and walked out of the office. The black Mercedes purred beneath him as he drove away from the polished city center, further into streets he rarely traveled. Glass towers gave way to modest houses, front yards scattered with tricycles, porches sagging under years of wear. He parked in front of a 2-story home with chipped paint and a tired swing swaying in the breeze. For a moment, he hesitated. What am I doing here? Going to an employee's house. This isn't me. But then he pictured the look on his client's face during that call, the disappointment cutting deeper than any words. That was enough. He got out of the car. The knock on the door was answered not by Emily but by a child's voice. "Mum, someone's here." Seconds later, the door creaked open. Nathan stepped inside and was struck by a scene that jarred against every image he held of success. Toys littered the floor. A stack of unopened bills sat on the dining table beside a beat-up laptop, and the faint smell of reheated pasta hung in the air. From upstairs, a baby cried, and there she was. Emily Harper. Her hair was pulled into a messy bun, dark circles shadowed her eyes, and she balanced a baby on one hip while the other hand hovered protectively over the laptop keyboard. She looked startled at first, then tense, as if bracing for impact. "Nathan?" she asked quietly, disbelief in her voice. He didn't bother with pleasantries. "Do you realize your delay nearly cost this company a multi-million-dollar deal?" His tone was sharp, each word clipped like the strike of a hammer. Emily's expression changed in an instant. The fatigue was still there, but something stronger rose above it. Resolve. Rocking her child gently, she met his glare. "I worked on that report until 2 in the morning, she said firmly. "When my son woke up with a fever, I sent it as soon as I could. Don't you dare accuse me of neglecting my job." Nathan blinked, caught off guard. He had expected excuses, tears, maybe even guilt. What he found instead was defiance, and beneath it, pride. His eyes wandered almost involuntarily to the wall. There, framed in cheap glass, hung a child's crayon drawing. 2 stick figures held hands beneath a bright yellow sun. Scrawled letters in the corner tugged at something buried deep in Nathan's chest. His throat tightened, Emily noticed. She tilted her head, her voice softer now. "You recognize that, don't you?" For a second, Nathan couldn't breathe. Memories stirred, ones he had locked away years ago. With a quick shake of his head, he turned back toward the door. "We'll discuss the project later," he muttered. though his voice lacked its usual iron. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by the chatter of children in the next room. Nathan Cole, who prided himself on control, precision, and strength, stood in the middle of that small, chaotic home and realized something terrifying. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. Nathan stepped back toward the doorway, but his shoes felt heavy against the worn carpet. He told himself to leave, that this visit was already unprofessional, unnecessary beneath him. Yet something in Emily's eyes, that unflinching steadiness despite her obvious exhaustion, anchored him to the spot. The baby shifted restlessly in her arms, and Emily adjusted the blanket around him with the kind of practiced grace that only comes from endless nights of tending. Nathan's gaze, hardened by years of boardrooms and negotiations, faltered for a moment. He saw not an excuse maker, but a woman who was carrying more weight than any spreadsheet could measure. Before either of them could speak again, Nathan's phone buzzed in his pocket. The name of his client flashed across the screen, Monarch Investments. His jaw tightened. He swiped to answer, putting the phone on speaker. "Mr. Cole," came the clipped voice of the client, sharp with irritation. "I've waited long enough. If your company can't provide the numbers we requested, we'll move our money elsewhere." Nathan inhaled slowly, steadying his tone. "The report is finished. I'll personally review it and send it within the hour." A pause on the other end. Then a curt reply, "You have 1 hour. After that, we're done." The line went dead. The silence in the room thickened. Emily looked away, guilt flickering across her face, but she didn't apologize. Instead, she said quietly, "The report is complete. It's on my laptop. You can take it now." Nathan strode to the dining table, his polished shoes crunching against scattered toy blocks. He leaned over the battered laptop, its surface covered in tiny stickers, a child's artwork, mingling with the tool that held millions of dollars worth of data. For a moment he hesitated. He had never seen a multi-million-dollar deal depend on a computer that looked so fragile, so personal. Emily set the baby down gently in a playpen and opened the laptop, her fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. Nathan watched her, noticing the speed of her calculations, the neatness of her data structures, the precision in her explanations. This wasn't the work of someone careless. This was the work of someone who had pushed through exhaustion, balancing a sick child and a corporate deadline, yet still delivered clarity. "There," she said finally, sliding the laptop toward him. "Every figure reconciled, every variable accounted for. If you want, I'll explain the model." Nathan scrolled through the report. His trained eyes picked out details, and to his surprise, he found them not just correct, but insightful. She had added notes, anticipating potential risks, details even his senior managers often overlooked. For the first time, Nathan felt his anger falter, replaced by something he hated admitting, admiration. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked suddenly, his tone softer. Emily frowned. "Tell you what?" "That you were dealing with a sick child. That you were—" He stopped himself. Nathan Cole didn't pry into personal lives. He didn't ask questions that opened doors into chaos. Yet the words pressed against his throat. Emily met his gaze, her voice low but unwavering. "Because you don't pay me to share my struggles. You pay me to do my job." And I did. The room went still. Nathan felt something shift inside him, though he couldn't name it. He was used to power dynamics, him towering above, others scrambling to justify themselves. But Emily hadn't begged. She hadn't groveled. She had stood her ground with the quiet dignity of someone who refused to be broken. From the other room, laughter suddenly erupted. A little boy darted in, holding a crayon-stained paper. "Mom, look. I drew you and baby," he said, beaming. He stopped short when he saw Nathan, this tall, sharply dressed stranger, in their small, cluttered home. The boy's eyes widened, curiosity mixing with unease. Emily smiled softly, crouching to take the drawing. "It's beautiful," she said, kissing her son's forehead. Then she looked back up at Nathan, her expression unreadable. For a moment, Nathan saw something that unsettled him more than any business threat, a life he didn't understand, A world built not on contracts and profit but on resilience, sacrifice and love drawn in crayon. His phone buzzed again. Time was running out. He had to return to the office, send the report, secure the client. Yet as he turned toward the door, his reflection in the glass window caught his eye. For the first time in years, he didn't see the unshakable businessman. He saw a man hesitating at the edge of someone else's reality, unsure whether to step away or step closer. Nathan cleared his throat. "I'll take this back and send it," he said finally, picking up the laptop. His voice tried to sound firm, but it carried an edge of uncertainty. Emily nodded, lifting her child again. "Do what you need to do." As Nathan walked back to his car, the sound of children's laughter trailed after him, clashing with the hum of the city beyond. He gripped the steering wheel tightly, trying to shake the feeling. But deep inside, a thought gnawed at him. For the first time in a long time, maybe I misjudged someone. Maybe I don't know everything after all. He drove off, but his mind didn't leave that small house or the woman inside it. The drive back to downtown Chicago felt longer than usual. Nathan's Mercedes glided smoothly along the freeway, but his mind was anything but steady. His world had always been simple in its architecture. There were winners and losers, deadlines met or missed, numbers that balanced or didn't. Yet the image of Emily Harper, her weary eyes, her messy living room, her defiance, kept intruding into that clean structure like cracks in a glass wall. By the time he pulled into the underground garage of Cole Enterprises, the hour given by Monarch Investments was nearly gone. Nathan grabbed the laptop from the passenger seat, his jaw tight with focus, and strode into the building. The lobby's marble floors gleamed. The air smelled of expensive polish and faint cologne, and assistants nodded nervously as he passed. He was, as always, the figure of authority. But inside, something churned uneasily. In the boardroom, 3 senior executives were already waiting. Their eyes flicked nervously to the clock on the wall. "Mr. Cole," one of them said. "Monarch's rep called again." "They're ready to pull out." Nathan didn't answer. He set Emily's worn laptop at the head of the table, flipped it open, and connected it to the projector. The men exchanged uncertain glances. They were used to sleek, company-issued machines, not one plastered with faded stickers of dinosaurs and rainbows. As the first slides appeared on the screen, murmurs filled the room. Nathan clicked through page after page, detailed models, scenario planning, risk assessments, contingency routes. He explained the logic as if it were his own, his deep voice steady and commanding. Yet a part of him knew much of this wasn't his brilliance. It was Emily's. She had anticipated angles he hadn't thought of. By the end, the room was silent. Even the most skeptical executive leaned back, impressed. Nathan picked up his phone and dialed Monarch Investments directly. "It's Nathan Cole," he said, as soon as the line connected. "The report is in your inbox. Look at page 14 for the revised projections. That will answer your concern." There was a pause. Then the voice softened. This is exactly what we needed. "Consider the deal secure, Mr. Cole." Nathan ended the call without ceremony, but a quiet relief settled across the boardroom. His team exhaled collectively. A crisis had been averted, but as the executives congratulated him, Nathan found his thoughts wandering. He should have been reveling in victory, in the fact that his empire had once again dodged collapse. Instead, he felt the need to drive back to that small house, to look Emily in the eyes and admit, even if only once, that she had saved the deal. "Mr. Cole," his CFO asked, "should we debrief now?" Nathan shook his head. "Later." He left them in confusion and returned to his office. The city stretched out beneath him, skyscrapers gleaming in the midday sun. His reflection in the glass looked every bit the conqueror of markets. But he couldn't shake the sight of a crayon, drawing taped to a faded wall. He poured himself a glass of water and sat heavily in his chair. Memories he had buried long ago clawed their way up. Memories of his own childhood, of a small house not unlike Emily's, of a mother struggling alone after his father walked out. He remembered the smell of reheated food, the constant worry about bills, the way he swore he would never live like that again. And he hadn't, but in escaping it, had he also forgotten what it meant to be human. The sharp knock on his office door pulled him back. His assistant entered holding a folder. "Sir, there's something you should see." Nathan waved impatiently, but the assistant placed the folder on his desk anyway. Inside were HR records. Emily Harper's name appeared at the top, her performance reviews consistently strong, her hours often stretching late into the night. And stapled at the back was a note from a supervisor. Employee requested flexible hours due to family illness. Denied. Nathan's lips pressed into a thin line. He had signed off on that denial himself. For a long time, he sat motionless, staring at the papers. Then his phone buzzed again. Another meeting, another demand, another deal. The world expected Nathan Cole, the titan of finance, to stay unshakable. But deep inside, a voice whispered, "Maybe you've been wrong. Maybe strength isn't what you thought it was." He closed the folder slowly, his decision forming like a storm on the horizon. Later that evening, long after the boardroom had emptied and the city lights shimmered against the glass towers, Nathan found himself once again behind the wheel of his car. He didn't tell his driver where to go. He knew. The Mercedes turned away from the glittering skyline and back toward that small neighborhood, toward the woman who had forced him to confront truths he had spent a lifetime avoiding. As he parked outside her home, the sounds of children's laughter spilled out into the night. Nathan sat still for a moment, gripping the steering wheel. For the first time in years, he wasn't sure whether he was walking into a conversation as a boss, a benefactor, or simply a man searching for a piece of himself he thought was long gone. And then he opened the door. The night air was cooler on the edges of the quiet suburban street. Nathan stepped out of his car, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the gravel by the curb. The houses here were dimly lit, some windows glowing with the faint flicker of televisions, others completely dark. Emily's house, however, radiated a warmth that felt almost foreign to him. Through the sheer curtains, he could see shadows moving, small figures darting across the room, a mother bent over a table. He paused at the foot of the steps. A part of him told him this was absurd. Nathan Cole didn't chase employees to their homes twice in one day. He didn't linger on personal matters. Yet here he was, heart beating faster than it had in years, driven by something he couldn't name. Before he could knock, the door opened. Emily stood there, a baby balanced on her hip once again. She froze, surprise flashing across her tired face. "You again," she said cautiously, her voice low. Nathan straightened, his instinct to reassert control kicking in. But then he saw the faint smudge of flour on her cheek, the tired slump of her shoulders, and the way the baby's tiny hand clung to her shirt. His voice came out softer than intended. "I wanted to talk," he said. Emily shifted uneasily, then stepped aside. "Come in, I guess. But it's not exactly boardroom material in here." The living room was even messier than earlier. Dinner plates stacked in the sink, a board game spread across the carpet, children's laughter echoing from upstairs. Nathan sat awkwardly on the edge of the worn sofa, his tailored suit almost out of place against the threadbare fabric. Emily lowered the baby into the playpen and crossed her arms. "So, did Monarch Investments pull out?" "No," Nathan admitted. "The report, your report, saved it." Emily didn't react with pride, only a faint shrug. "Good. That's what I worked for." Her detachment unsettled him. Most employees would have fallen over themselves to impress him, to take credit, to secure a promotion. But Emily didn't. She just stood there, her chin lifted, as if holding her ground was more important than recognition. Nathan cleared his throat. "I reviewed your record. You've requested flexible hours before." "I denied them," Emily's lips tightened. "Yes, you did." Silence stretched between them. Nathan, who could command entire boardrooms with a single word, suddenly felt like an intruder fumbling for justification. Finally, Emily broke the quiet. "Do you even know what it's like, Mr. Cole?" she asked. "To wake up at 3 in the morning because your baby can't breathe, then finish a report by dawn because the client won't wait? To sit in a meeting while worrying whether your child has eaten? To work twice as hard as everyone else, only to be told it's not enough?" Her voice cracked, but her eyes burned with fire. Nathan felt her words like blows, not because they were disrespectful, but because they were true. He thought of his mother, the way she had juggled 2 jobs after his father left, the exhaustion in her eyes that he had sworn never to inherit. And yet, here it was again, reflected in Emily Harper. "I don't know," Nathan admitted quietly. "I never let myself know." For the first time, Emily seemed caught off guard. Her arms dropped to her sides. She searched his face as if trying to decide whether this was manipulation or honesty. Before she could answer, the sound of footsteps thundered down the stairs. 3 children burst into the room, 2 girls and a boy, their faces flushed from play. "Mom, we're hungry," the eldest announced. Emily sighed. "Dinner's on the counter. Go wash your hands first." The children barely noticed Nathan at first, but the boy paused, staring at him curiously. "Are you Mom's boss?" Nathan blinked, thrown off balance. "Yes, I am." The boy nodded solemnly, then grinned. "Cool. Do bosses play Monopoly?" The girls giggled, dragging their brother toward the kitchen, leaving Nathan momentarily speechless. Emily smirked faintly. "Don't worry. They'll forget you're here in 5 minutes." But Nathan couldn't forget. That fleeting moment, children laughing, chaos swirling, a woman holding it all together, gnawed at something deep inside him. For years, he had measured worth in profit margins and contracts. Now he was staring at a different kind of wealth, one that had nothing to do with money. After dinner, as Emily cleared the plates, Nathan offered awkwardly, "Let me help." She raised an eyebrow. "You washing dishes?" "Why not?" he said, rolling up his sleeves. He took a plate, rinsed it under the tap, clumsily scrubbing while Emily watched in faint amusement. For a man who handled billion-dollar mergers, he looked entirely out of place with a sponge in his hand. Yet something about the absurdity of it made Emily laugh, a short, surprised sound that filled the room. Nathan looked up, startled by the sound, then found himself smiling despite his usual restraint. For a brief moment, the heaviness lifted. Later, as the children settled upstairs and the house grew quieter, Nathan lingered near the doorway. "You're stronger than most people I know," he said finally. Emily met his gaze, tired but steady. "I don't have the luxury of being weak." Nathan nodded, the words carving themselves into his mind. He had come here to reprimand an employee, to enforce discipline. Instead, he had found a mirror, one that forced him to confront the kind of strength he had long forgotten. When he finally left, the night felt different. The city lights no longer dazzled him. Instead, they seemed hollow. In his chest, something unfamiliar stirred. Not pity, not duty, but a quiet respect that unsettled him more than any boardroom challenge ever could. And as he drove away, one truth pressed against him relentlessly. Emily Harper was not just another employee. She was about to change everything he thought he knew about success, about sacrifice, about himself. The next morning, Nathan Cole arrived at the headquarters earlier than anyone could remember. His black sedan rolled smoothly into the underground garage, its headlights cutting through the dim, concrete space. Normally Nathan timed his entrances for effect, arriving minutes before a meeting, letting anticipation build among the staff. But today, there was no performance. Today, he needed silence, time to think. As he rode the elevator to the 30th floor, he studied his own reflection in the polished steel. The man staring back looked immaculate, suit pressed, tie perfectly knotted, jawline sharp. But behind the veneer, Nathan saw the exhaustion that no amount of money or grooming could erase. The night replayed in his mind. Emily's weary eyes, the baby's tiny fist clutching her shirt, the boy asking if bosses played Monopoly. He hadn't slept. He hadn't even wanted to. The doors opened into the executive corridor, where framed photographs of corporate achievements lined the walls. Nathan slowed his pace. Each picture represented a triumph, mergers, expansion, charity galas. Yet all of them suddenly felt sterile, staged, like decorations masking emptiness. In his office, his assistant Margaret was already waiting, a folder in her hand. "Good morning, Mr. Cole," she greeted briskly. You have calls from 3 investors. The logistics team wants an update. And Monarch Investments is pushing for final confirmation by noon. Nathan took the folder, but instead of flipping through it, he set it aside. Cancel my morning schedule. Margaret blinked. Sir, you heard me? Clear everything until lunch. Tell Monarch they'll have their answer by then. Margaret hesitated. Nathan Cole was not a man who cleared his schedule, but she nodded. Understood. When she left, Nathan sat at his desk staring at the skyline. The city spread out beneath him, a grid of ambition and exhaustion. For years, he had lived above it all, in a tower of glass, unreachable. But now, he thought of Emily's cramped living room, its chaos more real than any number on his balance sheet. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through last night's messages. At the top was one from Emily, short and apologetic. Thank you for helping with the dishes. Sorry about the mess. Nathan's lips curved into something dangerously close to a smile. He typed a reply, then deleted it. What could he say? That he had felt more human in her kitchen than in all the banquets and boardrooms of his career. That her laugh had stayed with him longer than any shareholder's approval. No, words like that would only confuse them both. Instead, he opened a blank document on his computer. A simple header, Harper Project Proposal. For the next hour, Nathan poured himself into the file. Not numbers, not contracts, but observations. How Emily managed pressure, how she improvised solutions, how she saw connections others overlooked. By the time he finished, the document read less like a report and more like a manifesto. He titled it, Rethinking Efficiency, Human-Centered Strategy. At 9 sharp, he called an executive meeting. The boardroom filled with the usual suspects, polished men and women in tailored suits, their expressions a mix of curiosity and caution. They expected Nathan to bark orders, to demand updates, to remind them who wielded authority. Instead, he stood at the head of the table with his sleeves rolled up, the manifesto on the screen behind him. Gentlemen, ladies, Nathan began, his voice steady but charged with something new. We talk about efficiency as if it's only numbers, but efficiency starts with people. Last night I witnessed a junior employee manage 4 children, a broken computer, and a last-minute report that kept this company afloat. Alone. Murmurs rippled through the room. A few exchanged glances. That employee, Nathan continued, was Emily Harper. She is the reason Monarch is still on the table. She is the reason we aren't on the front page of the business section this morning for failure. The head of logistics, a broad man with graying temples, frowned. With respect, Mr. Cole, Harper went outside her authority. Junior staff aren't meant to... Nathan cut him off sharply. Authority means nothing if it ignores results. She solved a problem your entire department failed to anticipate. Do you dispute that? The man faltered. No buts, Nathan snapped. From this day forward, I don't care if a solution comes from a senior executive or an intern. If it works, we use it. If you can't handle that, there's the door. The room fell silent. Some faces tightened with resistance. Others showed sparks of approval. Nathan could see it. Lines being drawn, loyalties shifting. He didn't care. He had made his decision. After the meeting, Margaret approached him cautiously. That was unexpected. It was necessary, Nathan replied, gathering his notes. Too long we've measured people by titles, not talent. Emily proved that wrong. Margaret studied him. This isn't like you. Nathan paused. Maybe that's the point. That evening, Emily was home again, balancing dinner prep with homework questions and a crying baby. She had just finished calming the toddler when her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. Be at the office tomorrow morning. You're presenting your report to Monarch yourself. Her stomach flipped. She dialed the number, and Nathan's voice answered. I can't, she blurted. I'm not ready. They won't take me seriously. They'll take you seriously because I'll be there, Nathan said firmly. And because your work deserves to be seen, Emily's throat tightened. Mr. Cole, this isn't how things are done. Exactly, he replied. That's why we're doing it. She wanted to argue, to refuse, but deep down, something inside her shifted. A tiny ember of pride flickered to life. When she hung up, she turned to see her eldest son watching her from the doorway. "Mom, are you scared?" Emily hesitated. Then she knelt, brushing his hair from his forehead. "Yes, but sometimes you have to do scary things to show the world you're more than they think." The boy grinned, a mix of mischief and admiration. "Then you'll win," Emily laughed softly, hugging him tight. She didn't know if it was true, but tomorrow she would walk into that boardroom. And for the first time in years, she wouldn't just be a shadow. She would be seen, and Nathan Cole, the man who had built an empire on control, would be the one standing at her side. The morning sky over Chicago was a pale, hard blue, the kind that promised a sharp wind, even if the sun pretended warmth. Emily arrived at Cole Enterprises 15 minutes early, a thrift store blazer pulled tight over a navy dress that had seen better days. She stood for a beat in the lobby's hush, marble, chrome, the soft thrum of money, and reminded herself to breathe. She wasn't here to apologize. She was here to present. Upstairs, Nathan had already detonated the routine. His assistant, Margaret, had arranged a conference room that didn't feel like a tribunal. Round table, not the long glass runway. Water and coffee set where everyone could reach. A second screen ready for live data. On Nathan's instruction, IT cleared access for Emily's files. No roadblocks, no quiet humiliations. He even asked operations to keep 2 analysts on standby in a side room in case she wanted to sanity check numbers live. When Emily stepped off the elevator, Margaret met her halfway with a brisk kindness that surprised her. "You're Emily? Good. I've got your visitor badge, a quiet corner to collect yourself, and, if you want it, oatmeal with berries. Don't argue. You'll think better fed," Emily blinked. "Thank you." It was the first time in months that help at work hadn't come with a string attached. Nathan appeared at the end of the corridor, suit darker than usual, expression guarded. For a moment, he seemed about to say something personal, then thought better of it. "Conference room B, 10 minutes. Monarch's team is already on the line from New York. 2 of them are in the building." "2?" Emily asked. "Helena Reed, senior partner, and Marcus O'Hara, portfolio head for logistics and infrastructure." He held the door for her, then added quieter, "You're ready." She wanted to say she wasn't. She wanted to say the babysitter cancelled, that her oldest had begged her not to go, that her stomach felt like a fist. Instead, she nodded and walked in. Helena Reed entered like a change in barometric pressure, tall. Silver hair caught at the nape, the posture of someone who'd lived 100 rooms like this and never once flinched. Marcus followed with a stocky, restless energy, jacket unbuttoned, eyes already measuring the screens. On the internal side, the CFO, Luke Patel, took a seat with a legal pad. Head of Logistics, Grant Malik, slid in with a cool glance that didn't reach Emily. Nathan sat last, not at the head, but slightly off-center, a deliberate repositioning that made Luke's eyebrows tick up. Helena shook hands with Nathan, then with Emily. Her grip was warm, not performative. "You're Ms. Harper," she said. Not a question, simply acknowledgement. "You built these models?" "Yes," Emily said, and kept her hands from fidgeting by anchoring them on the edge of the table. "Then take us through them," Helena said. "Pretend we don't care about titles. Only outcomes." That one sentence loosened something in Emily's chest, she began. The first slide was not the usual corporate boilerplate. Nathan had let her reorder the deck. She opened with a map, freight lanes glowing in thin bands across the Midwest, Lake Michigan like a cold, watchful eye. She pointed to the current route, then to the proposed one. "Status quo puts us through the Gary bottleneck at peak, which is why you've been hemorrhaging 2 to 3 days on average," she said, steady. "We shift to a Joliet crossdock, night window instead of afternoon crush, and swing up through the Bedford Park rail-to-truck link. Net 42 hours saved per 6-lane rotation, 7% cost down due to volume tier pricing that nobody's been claiming." Marcus leaned forward. "Volume tier pricing." His tone suggested a trap. Emily clicked to a scan of a contract appendix. "Your supplier's Schedule D, Clause 4.2. It's dusty. It's valid. The reason you missed it is because the carrier moved to a different template 3 years ago, but never rescinded the prior rider. Both are enforceable. The lower rate triggers automatically above 90 units per week. Helena glanced at Marcus with the faintest ghost of a smile. Marcus sat back, hands steepled. "Show me your plan B," he said. She did. "If rail congestion spikes, we pivot to a split run. Keep 50% on the core route, divert the remainder through an Aurora micro-hub we've pre-cleared for weekend staffing. Lost time under 5 hours. Budget delta plus 0.8%, still inside contract." Grant made a soft, disbelieving sound. Emily didn't look at him. Helena asked, "What about labor volatility?" "We're not blind to the headlines. We pre-negotiated overtime with the Aurora hub at capped rates," Emily said. "Also, we're building a reserve list of 8 certified forklift ops who can be on call for 12-hour windows. I have their availability calendars in the appendix." Nathan watched the room carefully. He knew the tells, when Helena's eyes warmed, when Marcus's mouth tightened. He also heard the old Nathan, the one who would jump in, answer for his people, bulldoze the doubt, whispering that this was where a CEO reclaimed the floor. He ignored that voice. "Run a sensitivity," Marcus said. "Live," Emily breathed in once. Pull up the sandbox." The second screen blinked to a spreadsheet with sliders she'd built at midnight 2 days ago. She nudged demand up 8%, pushed diesel prices up 12%, slid overtime utilization to 35%. The graph bent but didn't break. Break-even moves from week 9 to week 11. Still profitable by quarter. Silence, but a listening silence. Luke said, "Your churn assumption on carriers seems optimistic." Emily didn't flinch. "It's informed. We have letters of intent from 2 alternates. Both have 2-week onboarding clauses with penalty waivers if performance targets are met. I can read you the sections." Helena's chin rose a fraction. "You memorize the contracts?" Emily's mouth tugged. Not quite a smile, not quite a grimace. "I can't afford to be surprised." Nathan felt that line like a low note in his bones. Before Helena could respond, the conference phone chimed. A voice crackled in from Monarch's New York office, their risk counsel, Ms. Chu. "Apologies," she said. "We're monitoring a potential strike vote at the Bedford Park line. If that moves forward, your rail-to-truck handoff is dead in the water. How does your plan survive?" Emily pivoted without missing a beat. "We preload staging in Joliet and set a rolling buffer. If the vote goes through, we accelerate 2 cycles through our alternate carrier's Romeoville yard. That buys us 3 days. If it doesn't, we're ahead." "Costs?" Ms. Chu asked. "Up 1.25% over baseline for the week. Down 6% year over year on the full plan," Grant said almost gently. "That hinges on a yard we've never used." "Incorrect," Emily said. "We used Romeoville briefly 19 months ago during the ice storm. The data's in your archive. It just isn't tagged by facility, but by dispatch code. I re-tagged it." Nathan hid a smile behind his hand. She'd not only done the work, she'd cleaned the company's mess while she did it. Helena folded her hands. "I have one more question, Ms. Harper, not about numbers. About nerve. If this goes sideways at 2 in the morning and you're the one on the call, do you freeze or do you steer?" For a heartbeat, Emily's mind betrayed her. A flash of her kitchen at 2 a.m., a crying toddler, an overdue electric bill folded under a magnet, a spreadsheet glowing like a dare. She met Helena's eyes. "I steer." A corner of Helena's mouth softened. "All right." Before approval could land, the second screen blipped, red. Then a column of costs jumped by 15%, the way a heart monitor spikes. Marcus's head snapped around. "What the hell was that?" Emily's pulse kicked. She hadn't touched anything. Nathan's voice was calm, clipped. "Kill the external sync. Hey T, show me the changelog." On the screen, a meta panel appeared with timestamps. A credential, internal, not Emily's, had written to the live sheet 30 seconds ago from a floor below. Nathan looked at Grant. Grant's face went stiff in a way that told a story of its own. "Lock it," Nathan said. "Roll back 2 minutes. Miss Harper, continue." Emily swallowed and did. Her voice steadied as she walked them from risk to mitigation to timeline. By the time she closed the deck, the room's energy had shifted again. Not triumphant, not yet, but aligned. Helena leaned back. "We're prepared to proceed. Conditional approval. Weekly checkpoints for the first quarter." She looked at Nathan. And the author of this plan is in on every call. She will be, Nathan said. Marcus nodded once, grudgingly but sincerely. You've got steel, Ms. Harper. I can work with steel. The conference phone clicked as the New York line dropped. For a moment the room was just breathing. Grant cleared his throat. We still have to discuss chain of command. It isn't normal for a junior. Helena turned to him with the kind of attention that makes people wish they could rewind their sentence. Normal is a statistic. This is a result. Grant flushed and subsided. They stood. Handshakes moved around the table. When Helena took Emily's hand again, she held it a fraction longer. You're from the South Shore? She asked casually. Emily blinked. Yes, grew up near 75th. Helena's gaze flicked curious. Did you ever take classes at the South Shore Community Center? 10, 12 years ago? Emily's breath caught. She hadn't thought about that in forever. I did for one summer. They ran out of funding the next year. Helena nodded slowly, then turned to Nathan. You used to fund that center. The air tightened. Nathan's throat worked. A long time ago. Helena studied him with an expression Emily couldn't read. There was a scholarship for teens, STEM basics, logistics, a little operations, named for your brother, wasn't it? Her voice gentled on the last word. The room dropped away for Nathan. The photo on Emily's wall flared in his mind. The cheap frame, the stage lights washing out a man's face beside a boy with a trophy. The initials on the crayon drawing, JC. The way the past kept finding him in rooms he thought he owned, Emily felt something shift under her feet. I was in that cohort, she said, surprised at her own voice. I didn't finish the second track because the funding stopped. But the first summer, that's where I learned to love this kind of problem. Great flows, solving puzzles with the clock running. Nathan couldn't look at her. He stared at the skyline beyond the glass instead, at the city he'd tried to climb above. His brother's name pressed against his ribs like a bruise that never healed. He'd shut that door because grief and guilt had no line item on a P&L. By shutting it, he'd shut out 100 Emilys who'd needed that last nudge. He felt suddenly, viscerally, how much that choice had cost the world he pretended to optimize. Helena's voice softened. Small world. Smaller than we think. For what it's worth, Ms. Harper, I recognize the discipline. The way you stack contingencies. We taught that at the center. It's good to see it alive. Emily couldn't answer. Her throat ached in the best, strangest way. Marcus broke the spell, practical as gravity. We've got conditions. We move. Nathan? Nathan turned back into the room, collecting himself like a man returning from a long way off. We move, he said. Luke, draft the checkpoint schedule. Grant, your team supports this plan or gets out of the lane. Emily, he looked at her directly, voice steady but carrying a new thread of humility. Clear your afternoon. We're building this the way you designed it. They spilled into the hallway. The buzz of a deal in motion ran in the walls. Helena paused with Emily by the window. Do you have help? She asked. Not as a test, but like a woman who remembers the feel of a long climb. Sometimes, Emily said. Mostly we just do the day. Helena's eyes warmed. If anyone gives you grief about your title, send them to me. I have very little patience left for pretend hierarchies. A wry tilt to her mouth. And one more thing. If you ever want a mentor who isn't your boss, take my card. Emily took it as if it might evaporate. Thank you. Helena moved toward the elevators. Nathan caught up with her. For a second, they were two veterans on a quiet battlefield. Helena said softly, You can't fix the past, Nathan. But you can stop pretending it never happened, he exhaled. That obvious? To those of us who were there, she said, the gentleness, not absolution, but recognition. The elevator doors opened. She stepped in. Do the next right thing. Sometimes it's the only math that matters. The doors slid shut. Nathan found Emily in the smaller ops room, sleeves pushed up, building out the live schedule with two young analysts who watched her like she was a map out of a maze. He stood in the doorway for a moment, unseen, and let the sight anchor him. She wasn't performing. She was working. Calmly, precisely, as if the twisting of logistics and the chaos of life shared one syntax, and she'd learned it by necessity. Grant appeared at his shoulder, jaw tight. We need to talk. Nathan didn't look at him. We will. After you send Emily everything she requests, and after you tell your team on the record that this plan has your full cooperation." Grant's smile was thin. "And if I don't?" "Then I don't keep you," Nathan said, the old steel in his voice, but shaped by a new restraint. "I'm done protecting pride at the expense of outcomes." Grant's eyes flicked past him to Emily, then back. "You're changing the rules." "I'm reinstating the ones we should have had," Nathan said, and walked away. By mid-afternoon, the strike rumor firmed into a vote scheduled for Friday. Emily adjusted the buffer, pre-called Romeoville, and negotiated a provisional slot with a dispatch chief who remembered her from the ice storm week. "You're the one who brought us donuts at 3 a.m., aren't you?" And promised to keep a gate open if the worst happened. At 3:22 p.m., IT sent Nathan the audit report. The attempted cost spike on the live sheet had originated from a workstation assigned to Grant's senior analyst. Nathan forwarded it to HR and legal with a single line: "Proceed per policy. Suspend credentials. Preserve evidence." He didn't tell Emily, not yet. She was in a flow he wouldn't break for the satisfaction of a confrontation. At 5:40, the floor emptied. The city below changed skin. Office towers to taillights, polished shoes to sneakers, plates clattering in small kitchens. Nathan knocked on the frame of the ops room. Emily looked up, rubbing her eyes. "You should go home," he said. "Your kids." "I will," she said. 5 more minutes." He stepped in. "Helena knew the center." "I heard," she said. She didn't smile, but her voice held a warmth he hadn't heard before. "I didn't think anyone remembered." "I remembered," he said, and the admission cost him something and freed him too. "I just didn't know how to carry it." "I'm sorry I dropped it." Emily met his eyes. "You're picking it back up. That's what counts." He nodded, unable to say more without saying too much. He picked up his coat, then stopped. "Tomorrow I'm setting up a proper project room for this. Your name on the door." She shook her head automatically. "That will make me a target." "It will make you visible," he said. "Targets can be protected. Invisible can't." For the first time, she let herself fully smile. It wasn't dazzling. It was honest. "Then make sure it's bulletproof glass." He huffed a laugh. "Deal." They walked to the elevators together. Between floors, the car hummed like a held note. Nathan looked at the numbers lighting up overhead and thought of the drawing on her wall, the initials that had pulled a thread through years he'd tried to knot off. He couldn't change the day his brother vanished from the world. He could change tomorrow's schedule, the shape of a company, the way a door opened for someone who'd earned it. When the doors slid open, the cool lobby air met them. Emily tugged her blazer closed against the draft. "I have to pick up the kids." "Text me when you're home," Nathan said before he could stop himself. "Not orders. Just so I know you got there." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right." She walked out into the blue evening, a small figure against glass and steel, carrying a laptop and a future she'd built out of grit. Nathan watched until she turned the corner, then turned his phone over in his hand and for the first time in a long time, chose not to go back upstairs. Instead, he stepped into the night, the city feeling less like a trophy and more like a promise. Tomorrow, he'd call Helena about the center. Tomorrow, he'd make a different kind of line item. Tonight, he'd let himself be the man who did the next right thing. The next morning began not with sunlight, but with noise. Shoes squeaking, voices raised, the clatter of keyboards in overdrive. Cole Enterprises was buzzing before 8 a.m., and word had spread like wildfire. The Monarch deal was alive. For most employees, it meant security, continued contracts and bonuses that would keep their mortgages safe. But for a select few, it meant their quiet attempts to undermine Emily Harper had failed. When Emily walked into the building, badge clipped to her thrift store blazer, the shift in atmosphere hit her immediately. Some employees turned away, pretending to be focused on screens. Others whispered, their eyes cutting to her and then back down. The air carried the sour scent of jealousy, mixed with fear. Still, there were glimmers of something else too. Young analysts nodding respectfully, interns whispering her name with cautious admiration. She kept her chin level and walked straight to the new project room Nathan had promised. The sign on the glass wall read, Strategic Logistics Initiative, Lead Analyst, Emily Harper. For a moment she simply stood there, stunned. The letters seemed unreal, like they belonged to someone else. Inside, the room was alive with movement. 2 junior analysts arranged binders by date. IT had set up 3 screens with live data streams, and a logistics coordinator was pinning regional maps to the wall. Nathan was already there, jacket draped over the back of his chair, sleeves rolled up. He looked less like the aloof billionaire of yesterday, and more like a man who had chosen to roll in the dirt alongside his team. "You're late," he said, glancing at his watch with mock sternness. Emily glanced at the wall clock. "It's 7:52, 8 minutes late too early." "You're slipping," he said, deadpan, then let a half-smile break the facade. The analysts chuckled quietly. Emily, flustered but oddly warmed, dropped her bag by the desk. "What's first?" Nathan gestured to the whiteboard, where a schedule was already scrawled in neat handwriting. "2 things. First, the auditors are circling back today. Harvey wants to stress test the new buffer. He'll be here by noon. Second, the board is restless. They want a public update by evening, which means we prepare you for another round of questions." Her throat tightened. "They want me to present again?" "They need you to," Nathan corrected. "Your plan, your voice." She swallowed, nodded, and opened her laptop. The hum of work wrapped around her like armor. By mid-morning, tension began to creep back into the edges of the room. A courier dropped off an envelope addressed to Nathan, but the handwriting on the outside made Emily's stomach clench. Slanted, aggressive letters for Cole's eyes only. Nathan tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a crude collage of newspaper clippings about custody battles, child neglect cases, and bankruptcies. In the center, scrawled in red marker, "Is this who you trust with your company?" Nathan's jaw hardened. He handed it to his assistant. "Scan, log, escalate. Find the sender." Emily felt the room tilting, like the floor beneath her was glass. She tried to focus on the numbers in front of her, but her chest ached. "They're coming after me harder," she whispered. Nathan leaned across the table, voice low but firm. "No, they're coming after me, because I put your name on the door." She looked at him, trying to gauge whether this was just his usual bravado. But his eyes, steel grey, steady, held something more. Not performance, not pity, conviction. At 11:58 a.m., Harvey, the external auditor, walked in. Same grey suit, same thin briefcase, same flat effect. He sat, opened the case, and pulled out a sheaf of papers. "Miss Harper," he said without preamble, "last week you defended your projections. Today we test execution. Show me yesterday's mitigation in practice." Emily slid forward the live dashboards. "Romoville Yard accepted the provisional staging at 17:30 yesterday. Transfer completed at 18:05. Proof of delivery signed by midnight. Total deviation 55 minutes. Documentation attached." Harvey flipped pages, his pen scratching. "Overtime logs. Signed and verified. All within cap. Carrier fallback. Activated but not used." Harvey's pen stilled. He looked at her for the first time. "Better than projected." Emily felt her pulse in her throat. "Thank you." "Don't thank me," he said, cold but not unkind. "Keep doing it." He packed his case, nodded to Nathan, and left without another word. When the door closed, the room exhaled. One of the junior analysts whispered, "He never says that." Emily allowed herself the smallest smile. But relief was short-lived. At 2 p.m., Nathan was summoned upstairs for a closed-door board briefing. Emily stayed behind, refreshing graphs, double-checking cost curves. The room felt hollow without him, though she told herself she didn't need his shadow to stand tall. Still, when her phone buzzed, her heart jumped. It was a message from Nathan. "They're trying to strip you from the project." "Hold steady." Her hands trembled on the keys. She looked around the project room, the maps, the numbers, the interns who looked to her for answers, and a fire caught inside her. No, they wouldn't erase her. Not after everything. When Nathan returned an hour later, his tie loosened and his expression carved from stone, he said only, "You present tonight at 6, boardroom, no filters. Just you." Her stomach dropped. "Nathan, Emily," he said firmly, leaning closer, "they think they can break you by pushing you into the light. Prove them wrong." She stared at him, then at her trembling hands, then at the projection screen. Slowly she nodded. By 5:45 the boardroom was packed. Not just directors, but department heads, lawyers, and even a few monarch representatives dialing in from screens. The air was sharp with tension. Nathan opened the meeting, voice smooth as glass. "This company has always valued results. Tonight you'll hear from the person who delivered them." He gestured to Emily, Ms. Harper. Her heels clicked softly as she crossed the room. She stood at the head of the table, laptop open, heart hammering. She thought of her children asleep at home, of the drawing with the initials on the wall, of Helena's quiet words, "Pretend we don't care about titles. Only outcomes." She drew a breath. "Good evening. I'm not here to ask for permission. I'm here to show you what we've achieved and why we'll achieve more." Her voice didn't shake. Slide by slide, she laid it out. Delays avoided, costs trimmed, contingencies executed. She showed graphs not as weapons, but as truths. When the head of logistics tried to interrupt, she overrode him with data, so clean the room went still. When a board member pressed about risks, she calmly walked through buffers that Nathan himself hadn't seen yet. By the time she finished, there was no whisper, no scoff, no doubt. Just silence and the weight of recognition. Then Helena, joining by video from New York, leaned forward. "I've heard enough. This is the kind of mind we partner with." A vote. The project continues under Ms. Harper's leadership, one by one. Reluctant or not, the others followed. When the meeting adjourned, Emily sank into her chair, weak with exhaustion, but fierce with triumph. Nathan stepped to her side, leaning just close enough for her to hear. "You didn't just survive," he murmured. "You shifted the ground under them." She turned to him, eyes bright with disbelief. "Did I?" He nodded once, slow and certain. "Yes, and tomorrow you'll do it again." Outside the glass, the Chicago skyline glittered against the night. Inside, for the first time, Emily felt something unfamiliar but undeniable. Not fear, not exhaustion, power, and with it, the terrifying, exhilarating knowledge that this was only the beginning. The night after the boardroom victory should have been sweet. Emily should have gone home, tucked her children into bed, and felt the rare comfort of a battle won. But victories, she was learning, came with shadows. She arrived home close to 9 p.m., her legs trembling from the long day. The babysitter looked exhausted, but gave her a quick hug. "They're asleep." "Don't worry," Emily paid her with crumpled bills she could barely spare. The apartment was quiet, only the hum of the refrigerator filling the silence. Emily dropped her bag and leaned against the door. For a moment, she let herself imagine a world where things would now be easier, that the board's approval meant the end of the whispers, the sabotage, the sleepless nights. But the illusion shattered when she noticed a folded note pushed under her door. She picked it up. The paper was cheap, the handwriting blocky. "Keep bringing your kids into this, and someone else will decide if you're fit to be a mother." Her stomach dropped. Her hands shook so violently she almost tore the paper. She shoved it into her bag before the kids could see it in the morning, then stumbled into the bathroom and locked the door. Silent sobs racked her chest. She thought of the social services visit, of the video leaked from her apartment. This wasn't office politics anymore. This was war. The next morning, Nathan was waiting in the lobby of her building. His car was parked across the street, driver gone. His coat collar turned up against the wind. "You look like you didn't sleep," he said. His voice low, not accusing, but concerned. "I didn't." She shoved the note into his hands. "This was under my door." He read it once, then again. His face hardened, jaw flexing with barely suppressed rage. "Grant, you don't know that," Emily said quickly. "I know his tactics," Nathan snapped. He took a breath, steadied his voice. "Emily, this isn't just corporate sabotage anymore. They're going after your children." "That crosses a line I don't let anyone cross." Her eyes burned. "But what if I lose them?" "I can't. You won't." His voice cut through her panic like steel. "Not while I'm standing. Do you understand?" Emily wanted to believe him. She wanted to lean into the certainty in his voice. But the fear was heavy, coiled like a snake around her ribs. At the office, things escalated further. Anonymous emails began circulating through the company, attaching snippets of the leaked home video, framing Emily as unstable, overwhelmed, unfit. Some were cruel enough to include doctored captions, "This is who Nathan Cole trusts with millions." HR forwarded the emails to Nathan. He slammed his hand down on the desk so hard, his water glass toppled. "Enough," he growled. "If the board won't clean house, I will." That afternoon, he called an all-staff meeting. Hundreds of employees crowded into the auditorium, whispers echoing like a hive of bees. Emily sat near the front, her pulse racing. Nathan strode onto the stage, every inch the powerful CEO, but this time something else flickered in his expression. Not just control, not just dominance. Anger, yes, but also loyalty. "Let's clear the air," he said into the microphone. The room fell silent instantly. "Over the last week, one of our own has been targeted. Not for incompetence, not for dishonesty, but for daring to do her job better than those who tried to stop her." Emily froze. He was talking about her openly to the entire company. Miss Harper's plan saved the Monarch deal, Nathan continued, his voice echoing like thunder. "Her numbers, her foresight, her grit. Without her, we would have lost tens of millions and the trust of our largest partner. Instead, we won. And yet some among you thought it acceptable to spread lies, to harass her, even to drag her family into this." "That ends today," murmurs swept the room. Faces shifted, some guilty, some defiant. "If you think this company will ever reward sabotage over results, you're in the wrong building," Nathan said, his gaze like a blade sweeping the room. "From this day forward, Cole Enterprises will protect and elevate talent, no matter where it comes from. And if anyone here believes otherwise, my office door is open. Walk through it, hand me your badge, and leave." The room was dead silent. Emily sat frozen in her chair, her throat tight, her hands clenched in her lap. For the first time, someone had stood up for her, not in whispers, not in private, but in full view of everyone. When the meeting ended, Nathan walked straight off the stage, ignoring the cluster of executives who tried to stop him. He came directly to her. "You're not alone anymore," he said softly, so only she could hear. Her lips trembled, but she managed a whisper. "Thank you, but the battle wasn't over." That evening, as Emily prepared to leave the office, her phone buzzed. It was the school principal, Ms. Harper, he said, his tone careful. "We had an incident today. Your son, Michael, got into a fight. Emily's knees went weak." "Is he okay?" "He's fine. But when we asked why, he said other kids were calling you names. He lashed out to defend you." Tears welled instantly. I'll come right away. No need, we've settled things for now. But I thought you should know. It seems whatever's happening at your workplace is bleeding into his life." Her heart cracked. She ended the call and sat frozen in her chair, staring at the floor. The cost of this fight was spreading further than she had ever feared. Nathan found her like that minutes later. She told him, voice breaking, about Michael's fight. Nathan was silent for a long moment. Then he said something she didn't expect. "Emily, if it comes to choosing between my company's image and your family's safety, I'll burn the company to the ground." She looked up at him, shocked. "You don't mean that?" "I do." His voice was quiet but absolute. "Because once I chose wrong, and I live with it every day. I won't choose wrong again." Emily's tears spilled freely. For the first time, she didn't try to hide them. Nathan didn't move closer, didn't touch her, didn't cross the fragile boundary between them. He simply stood there, a wall against the storm, his words anchoring her in the chaos. And in that moment she realized something terrifying and undeniable. This man wasn't just her boss anymore. He was becoming part of her fight, part of her family's survival, and that meant the war they were in had only just begun. The storm broke on a Thursday morning. Emily was packing school lunches, peanut butter sandwiches wrapped in foil, an apple split into quarters. A juice box slid into each bag when her phone exploded with vibrations. Text after text, email after email. She frowned, wiped peanut butter off her fingers. and finally looked. The first message was from her neighbor. "Emily, turn on Channel 5. Now." Her stomach sank. She fumbled for the remote. The TV screen lit with the news anchor's solemn face. Behind her, B-roll footage played of Emily leaving the Coal Enterprises tower. Clutching her bag, children's laughter faint in the background. Sources inside Coal Enterprises confirm that junior analyst Emily Harper is at the center of internal controversy, the anchor said. Leaked footage from her apartment shows unstable conditions, raising questions about CEO Nathan Cole's judgment in elevating her to a leadership role. Then the clip rolled, the same cursed video from weeks ago. Emily in her cluttered living room, kids screaming, a pot boiling over on the stove. The captions blared across the bottom, "Is this who leads million-dollar deals?" Emily's breath caught in her throat. Her son Michael wandered in, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, why are you on TV?" She shut the screen off so hard the remote cracked. Her hands shook. "Eat your breakfast," she whispered, voice breaking. But she knew. The war was no longer just whispers in offices or notes under doors. It was public now, and her children could read. At Coal Enterprises, the building buzzed like a disturbed hive. Reporters clustered outside the glass doors, microphones flashing, camera shutters clicking. Employees hurried through the gauntlet, heads down. Upstairs, the board had convened an emergency session. Nathan strode in, eyes cold, coat still on his shoulders. Around the table, directors clutched printed copies of the news article. The headline screamed, "Coal Enterprises CEO risks empire for unfit mother." "Explain this," barked Jonathan Hale, the oldest board member, veins bulging in his temples. "Our company's name is being dragged through mud because you're protecting a junior employee who can't manage her own home." Nathan planted both hands on the table. "Watch your words. She's the reason Monarch stayed with us." "Monarch doesn't care about messy kitchens," Jonathan spat. "They care about optics. Investors are calling me already, asking if Coal Enterprises is a charity case." The room muttered agreement. A few board members glanced uneasily at Nathan, but none spoke in his defense. Nathan straightened, his voice like a blade. "Optics? You want optics? Let me tell you what they see. They see a woman who juggled 4 children alone and still delivered a better plan than any of you. They see grit. They see truth. If you can't sell that as strength, then perhaps you don't belong on this board." The silence was icy. One director cleared her throat. "Nathan, no one questions her intelligence. But the story has escaped us. The press is feasting. Our rivals are amplifying it. We must respond, then we respond," Nathan said. "With the truth." Or, Jonathan sneered, "we cut her loose. Quietly, shift her plan to another department head, issue a statement about maintaining standards." "Clean and simple," Nathan's eyes burned. "No." The word dropped like a gavel. Meanwhile, Emily sat in the project room, phone buzzing endlessly. HR had offered to temporarily relocate her until things cooled down, but she refused. She couldn't hide, not when she'd fought this far. Still, the fear gnawed. Every whisper in the hall felt sharper. Every sideways glance felt like a judgment. When Nathan walked in, the room seemed to steady around him. He closed the glass door, shutting out the noise, and dropped a stack of newspapers on the table. "Front page, every one of them," he said flatly. Emily's hands tightened on her laptop. "They'll fire me." "They'll have to fire me first," Nathan replied. Her head snapped up. "Don't say that. This is your company, your life's work." His jaw tightened. "A company isn't a life if it costs you your soul." For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Emily saw something raw in him, something unguarded. A man who had carried his empire like armor, only to realize it was strangling him. "I don't want to be the reason you lose everything," she whispered. "You're not," he said. "You're the reason I finally see what matters." Her heart hammered. She tore her gaze away, blinking fast. "What if Monarch pulls out? What if investors run? Then I rebuild," he said simply. "But not without you." By late afternoon, the scandal had spread further. Talk shows debated Emily's fitness. Social media split into camps, but your Harper strong versus your coal collapse. A rival firm's CEO tweeted a thinly veiled jab. Leadership means discipline, not daycare. The cruelest blow came at 5 p.m. Emily's children were swarmed by reporters outside their school. Michael tried to shield his younger sisters, shouting at the cameras, but one photo captured them crying, faces blurred only after it went viral. Emily saw the images on her phone and broke. She collapsed into a chair, sobbing uncontrollably. "They're just kids," she choked. "They didn't ask for any of this." Nathan knelt beside her, his hand hovering near hers but not daring to touch. His voice was low, urgent. "Emily, look at me." She lifted her tear-streaked face. "This ends tonight," he said. "No more silence. No more defense. We go public. You and me, together." Her breath hitched. "What do you mean?" "A press conference," Nathan said. "We tell the story ourselves. Not the doctored video, not the lies. The truth. Who you are, what you've done, what this company stands for. If the world wants optics, we'll give them authenticity." Emily shook her head, terrified. "I can't stand in front of cameras." "You can," Nathan cut in. "You already stood in front of Monarch. You already stood in front of the board. You can stand in front of the world." She stared at him, tears blurring her vision. "And if it destroys you? Then I fall with honor," Nathan said. "But if we don't fight, they'll destroy you alone. And I won't allow that." Her chest ached with fear, but also with something fierce and new, an ember of belief kindled by his certainty. Slowly, she nodded. "Then we fight." Nathan exhaled, the faintest trace of relief flickering in his eyes. He rose, straightened his suit, and extended his hand. "Come with me, Emily," he said. "Let's show them the truth." And as she took his hand, trembling but resolute, Emily knew their lives were about to be burned open on the world's stage. That night, the skyline of Chicago glowed with restless energy. Reporters camped outside Cole Enterprises, cameras ready, microphones live. Inside, Nathan and Emily stood together behind the closed doors of the media hall, lights already blazing beyond. The doors would open in 60 seconds. For Nathan, it was the moment he chose his soul over his empire. For Emily, it was the moment she chose her voice over her fear, and for both, it was the moment their war with the world, and perhaps with themselves, would ignite into something no one could ignore.